You can make $350,000 a year, or you could make $50,000 a year. If you don't have a big why driving every single decision that you make on a daily basis, it will never be enough. I bought a condo at 23 because I had a big why driving every single decision I made up until that point and every decision I have made after. My name is Emma and I have been living an intentional life for 11 years, and this intentionality behind every decision has brought me to a point where I can proudly say that I do live a life that I enjoy, and I'm continuing to make it every single day. So today I'm going to tell you, why did I do this, and what we can all learn from the decisions that this 23-year-old made over 6 years ago. I graduated college in May of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. Before I graduated college, I did have a job already lined up, and it was going to take me about 3 hours from where I grew up. And many people during that time were having those offers rescinded. The companies that they were signing up to work for just could not take them on. And I was really hoping that that wouldn't happen to me. And luckily, I was able to start my job. It was a month later than I had intended, but it was okay because I still had a job. And up until that point, I was working throughout college. I had 20 different jobs in college, just odd jobs to pay the rent, because since I was 19, I have been paying my own rent and my own bills. And prior to that, any fun activity, it was on me. This was a very big thing that I was taught from a young age, was that I needed to take care of myself and I needed to figure it out. So in school, I was able to come up with $500-$600 of expenses every single month. Whether I was working or whether I was on internships, I had to make this money. So it was up to me. And because of this, I came to a point where at 22 and I was in a new apartment, I was making all this new money, I knew how to live off of a few $100 a month, and I continued that lifestyle throughout the first few months of having a big girl job. And I was making about $60K with my first job. So big money for a college student, not necessarily big enough to buy a place unless you were saving quite a bit. So within the first 6 months, I had saved about half of what I was making at the time. So I had about 20K saved up, and I had about 5 to 10K saved up from college already. Because I had worked so much, I was able to save up about 35K, and I was now living in Cape Cod in Massachusetts, so it was further from the city. There's not a lot going on if you aren't there during the summer months, and it was now getting into the winter months of 2020, and I had to make a decision of what I was going to do next. My job had become fully remote, so I didn't really need to live in the Cape anymore, so I moved back to live with my parents, and it was about 6 months after that that I did finally buy a place. And a lot happened in my life during that time, but what was happening overall was I had accepted the responsibility that my loans, where I was going to live next, that the graciousness of my parents letting me live with them was going to end, and I didn't want to continue doing that because I knew being independent was where I wanted to be. So I had to figure it out. There was a lot of big changes happening in a very short amount of time that I needed to take hold of. And what I learned pretty quickly from starting my corporate job was that I wanted to be financially independent from a job. I didn't know exactly what that was going to be. My brother at the time was already into real estate, so I took his advice and was like, okay, well, he said that buying your own place really does give you a lot of opportunities, so I started looking into it. At the time, I was considering moving somewhere near the Cape because of my job, but deep down, I knew I didn't want to stay at this job. I didn't want to stay out in the middle of nowhere. It got very cold, and there's not a lot to do in the Cape in the winter, so I was like, this just isn't going to be me for the long term, so I had to move on. And I was back in the Boston area, so I was looking into different places. Now, when I did find a place to buy, I was still at my old job, and I didn't know if I was gonna have to move back to the Cape at some point, if that was going to be asked of me. So that was where the decision of getting a condo came in. that if I needed to move and go somewhere else, I could always rent this place out. Now, you might be thinking, at 23, you were very young and you don't have a lot of credit necessarily, and you don't have a lot of proof that you can actually afford a mortgage of this substantial amount. And yes, at the time, I also thought that, and I was like, I need someone to believe in me that I can do this, because I believe that I can. And one of my brother's real estate agents took my call, and he was willing to help me figure it out and find a place. And I was really happy that somebody had taken a chance on me, because I had taken a chance on myself. For me, that big why was continuing to motivate me. Those first 6 months after college, I did not have to pay back my student loans. And because of the pandemic, we were also in a financial freeze with paying any student loans back. So for about a year and a half, there was no interest being paid, and you didn't really have to pay any of your loans back except for the personal loans. And the majority of my loans were personal. So I had to make this decision of, well, I'm gonna pay rent anyway. At least if I'm paying for rent, I am paying it into my own self. And if you are a first-time home buyer, you can pay a 3% down instead of a 20% down, and that was also really helpful to me. So I was able to get a $250,000 condo and not have to pay 20% down, only have to pay 3% down. So the money was working out, I had that much saved. So I decided to go and look, and there was a day where I was super excited about this one place, but it was like the bottom apartment. I was just sick and tired of living with my parents. So I was like, you know what? It's not that bad. Like, I don't mind this area. Let me go for it. And we were just in the process of signing, and a cash buyer came in and offered cash, and then my deal was swept off the table. And I was so devastated. But I decided I was going to keep going, and that following Saturday, a condo was being shown, and I went to go see it, and I was like, oh, it's really nice. I want to put an offer down. And I was like, I don't care what we have to do. I want this place. And it was on the top floor. It was in this really quiet area. It was 5 minutes to 2 different highways. So it was in a really good location, and within 10 minutes there was Whole Foods and all these different grocery stores. So I was a lot happier with this location. I ended up getting the place, and now I'm 23, October of 21, and I need to move in. And in the meantime of getting the condo, I get a job offer. A recruiter reaches out, and I'm in the process of getting a new job. It all worked out, and now suddenly I was making $30K more with this next job. So I moved into my condo because we had to do some renovations on a Saturday, and the following Monday I started my new job. So a lot of things had changed within a very short period of time. Within a span of 2 years, I had gone from being in I went to Ghana for my senior trip at the start of January of 2020, to having to live with my parents, to living on the Cape, to living with my parents again, to having a new place and a new job. So my life had felt like it was on this turbulent movement, and yet I was content with my decision because I had a bigger why. I wanted to get rid of my student loans, but I also wanted to live in my own place and start my investing future in, the one way that I had any actual evidence of through my brother. So I was now in a lot of debt, over 350 grand worth of debt. And one of it I was okay with because it was a loan. The interest was very low. I was paying into it every month. But the other debt was going to gain a lot of interest very quickly. I can save how I paid off that on another day. But what brought me to the point of being okay with signing on the dotted line was that throughout my whole life, I had accepted the responsibility that every decision I was going to make, I was also going to have to deal with the consequences. If I was to lose my job and default on my mortgage, that would be on me. And that was a very real possibility. We were in a turbulent time, and honestly, the economy always is. You could be laid off at your job for any reason, which I will also talk about that in a different video where I got laid off twice in a span of 3 months. So turbulence is very prominent, which is why financial independence was something that I wanted more than anything. I wanted to control where my money was coming from and where it was going. So I had to sit down and accept that the responsibility was on me, and that responsibility shifted how I saw myself. I saw every decision I was making as it was important. I had the responsibility and I had the ability to move forward or to stay stuck or to hand off my responsibility to someone else. I decided to take it on, to sign the loan and to move into this new place. I also had to spend about 10 grand to fix it up before I moved in. So my money had been very depleted at that point. I was very much making minimal payments on my student loans, but I was in this new place. I was making more money, and that new money could now go into paying off my student loans quicker. So if you are wondering, well, how much was I paying for an apartment versus how much my mortgage was, the difference was only a few $100s. So really it worked out for me in the end because of all the numbers. But that is also a really big thing that we have to look at, is we have to get real about what it is that we're dealing with and what it means. If the numbers are indicating to you that you need to work more or that you can't afford this, you have to be okay with that. You have to look at, is this actually going to help me with my big vision or not? And with financial independence being the thing that I wanted, I was looking at the numbers. How much did I need to put down? How much am I going to have to pay back per month? What was the interest? How much would I have to pay additionally on top of the loan because of the interest? All of these were factors that I had to consider at the time, and are factors that I still continue to consider all the time. And very early on, I had also learned that your worth and your value do not come from the stuff that you have. So I was very okay with driving a car that only cost a few grand out of college. And it was one that was also gifted to me from my family partially, and I partially paid for. So I was okay with not having a brand new fancy car, of buying a brand new Tesla or whatever, because I had this brand new job that was paying me a lot of money that I didn't have before. I was okay with not wearing super designer clothes or going out to fancy restaurants, because I knew that there was something bigger that I was working towards. And it made saying no to all of these things, to not compare myself to others, a lot easier. But something that also happened that I didn't quite anticipate was that I was showing up for me and showing to others what it looks like when you do that, and other people couldn't stand that. Within that following year, after I bought the condo, my close friends who I had known for 15 years at that point stopped talking to me. There was a jealousy there that I could not overcome. I never compared myself to them, but they were very much comparing themselves to me. So when you start believing in yourself, other people will stop, or it will become clear that they never really did. And that was something that was difficult to come to terms with, because this was something awesome that I had done that I wanted to celebrate with others, but the people who I had surrounded around myself at that point were not interested in celebrating with me. So I had to let them leave and make space for new people to come into my life. And at that time, I had already joined a few groups in the area that I was living in, because I had no idea about anyone, because everyone after college moved back to their hometowns. And I didn't have any friends yet. So I had already started reaching out to new people, joining different groups. So I was making some new connections. And then when the people who I thought would be there for me weren't, I had to accept that this was just the reality. And I didn't know that this was going to happen, but this is what happens when you show up for yourself. Other people who refuse to do that, or who can't stand to see it, will fall away. And those people were never truly there for you, and that was something that I had to accept. My life changed very quickly during that time, but I had to get used to it and accept that was just the reality of it. And a lot of people thought that I was crazy, that I was embarking on something that you usually do once you're married and have another income to depend on. And I was embarking on this journey by myself because I believed in me. And I wanted this place to be mine. I wanted to have a place of safety and a sense of my own that no one could take away from me, or that I didn't have to share with anyone. This was mine, that I was building for myself. And that someday, should someone come into my life and we grow a life together, this would always be mine, or at least where I started, and that I could go back to it. And I did it with the intention that someday I probably won't want to live in that area anymore, but that I could put it up for rent and that I could leave and go follow my truth and my life somewhere else, which is exactly what I did in March of 24. I decided to move to North Carolina. So this place that I had only lived in for about 2.5 years, 3 years, suddenly wasn't home anymore. And the same real estate agent that took a chance on me to help me find this place now became my property manager. And I was very thankful, and I still am, that he's willing to show up. He doesn't live very far from where the property is, so it's super convenient and easy for him. But I had to go through figuring out, well, what does it mean to create a business, to have a rental? It's very different when you live in a property versus when you rent it out. What is the logistics behind that? How do you deal with the taxes? There was more things that were coming down the pipeline, but I knew at 23 that this was something that older me was going to be able to face, because up until this point, I faced everything and I figured it out, and so have you. You have definitely figured out every single thing that has come your way. And this condo still exists within my life. It's been over 5 years now, or it's just going to be 5 years in November, and so much has changed in my life. But it was the first big ticket item that I bought for myself, which is pretty cool to look at because it's something that continues to give back to me to this day. And I want you to look at your life like that. What is adding to your life, and what is going to return on your investment for the rest of your life? I may not have this place forever, but what it taught me was so much more important than any money that I spent. And that it was, I can do it. I can show up for me, and everyone else will either fall in line or fall off. And that was exciting to me. The money will figure itself out. And there was many times where I wasn't going out all the time, but I never deprived myself either. I was never holding back from myself anything that I wanted, because at that point, my needs weren't crazy. They were things that were helping me become a better version of myself. I accepted that everything that I could bring into my life was a tool to make me better, or to help me, or to have fun. These things were not going to be the actual things bringing the joy into my life. A new car, a new jacket, a new purse is not going to bring you joy. These are all tools that can help you get from one location to the next, to help you do things in your life, but they are not going to be things that move you forward. They are not going to bring that joy. And if we believe that they are, it is a mistrust and a misuse of objects in our life. The only person that's going to move you forward, that's going to make you happier, is you. You have to be excited about your life and see everything in it as either helping you move forward or not. And people and mindsets were not helping me move forward, so I had to get rid of them. I had to stand behind the decision that I made, the responsibility of showing up every single month, paying my mortgage, paying my student loans. We can talk about that another time, but realizing that these things are real decisions that have real consequences, and when we hold ourselves to that standard, we seem to meet it. We seem to rise to it. Financial independence is still my primary goal. It is something that motivates me all the time. Every time I think that I'm not doing enough or I'm not moving forward enough, I go back to that girl who signed up for this journey and decided that my life was going to be worth it, that I was going to move forward because no one else was going to do it for me. And when I signed the papers and when I got the call, I did both of those things on my own. My parents couldn't come with me, and I didn't have a partner to come with me either, because I was the only person whose name was going to be on that loan. I had to do it by myself. I was in my room by myself when I got the final call that everything was going to move forward, and I was a month later by myself in the lawyer's office signing that paper. It was me against the music, and I had to celebrate with myself. So this journey is our own. No matter who walks next to you or who is part of your life, you walk this journey on your own, and it is not a bad thing. It is not meant to be sad or disappointing. It is meant to be a beautiful journey that you are on. You are on an amazing life path, but you have to decide that, and you have to keep making decisions to move you forward. It was not easy to realize how much responsibility was on my shoulders, but I also knew that I made those decisions and I was going to face those consequences, whatever they may be. And though it did not end badly on either of these accounts or any of these accounts, I knew that I was going to be able to handle it and I was going to figure it out, because I had up until that point. And 5 years later, I'm still figuring it out. I learn more about business every day, about taxes, about all this stuff, and it gets easier because I have a record of all of these wins to show me that, hey, you can do it. And at the end of the day, it's okay that other people haven't shown up for you, or that you're not as far ahead as you want to be, because your why is driving you forward. I want to be independent completely. I want to be the person who is in charge of where the income's coming from and where it's going. But that doesn't happen on its own, and it doesn't happen on accident. I didn't accidentally choose that apartment. I didn't accidentally get that job or the next job or the job after that, or any of the other things in my life. There was so much intention behind every choice, and the intention was that I was going to be okay no matter what, and that financial independence was mine to give to myself. So invest in you, and invest in the things that actually bring you joy. I very quickly realized that it's not the car, it's not the house, it is not the thing that you think you're doing that is bringing you the joy. It is the actions behind it. It is what you think it is. So sit with it, figure out what you're doing, why you're doing it, and decide that you're worth more. You can show up and do the hard things because you've done it your whole life. You can go and look into your own history and look at all the points that brought you to this moment, and that you did not come this far to only get this far. And that was the same resolution that I made at 23, that this probably wasn't going to be the only property that I would ever own, and that this was just one step on a very long journey of choosing myself. I had to choose me back at 23, and I'm continuing to do it today. That is why we are on the I Choose Me journey, and I wanted to share this with you because I was inspired by a few people to share more of my story, and I want to be here with you to share it, and I want to hear more about yours. What have you done that people called you crazy for until they realized that crazy actually turned you into smart? Many people thought I was crazy, and now people are like, wow, it's super smart to have an income property at a fairly young age. So people will say whatever they want about you. What you believe about you is far more important, and if you believe you can do it, that's actually the only thing that matters. And I can look back in my past, and majority of the time people believed that I couldn't do it, but the only person who believed in me and who needed to was me. So what can you do to bring yourself a little bit closer to believing in you and to showing up for you? There is a beautiful life ahead of you, but you have to choose it. Invest in it, invest in you, and intentionally make decisions along the way. There is a big wide world waiting for you to step into the greatest you. You just gotta let everything else go, and all the people, they weren't meant to be there, but you are. So show up. I will see you very soon. I hope you have an amazing week.